it's really powerful that we have a diverse people who are in this awakening. What I mean by diverse kind of people, because, like, for example, I came out of the church. I was a pastor in the church, the Christian church. You need somebody like myself, not just the camps that coming out of jail. A lot of these guys come out of jail. A lot of these guys coming off the streets, and a lot of these guys coming out of gangs and all that kind of stuff. All praise to the Most High for that. But I'm talking about, we don't need to listen to just camps and that's it. We have to listen to people like myself who have come out of the church and have received the truth. Because truth be told, a lot of the guys that's in the camps, like I say, I have nothing against the camps. They're the ones that's really on the front lines, believe it or not. So, but a lot of the camps are cussing. A lot of the camps are spewing hate, fighting among each other. And not only that, we got some campers, I'll call them campers. Some camps are just really know-it-all. And some of them are limited, that they won't go into other books. They won't go into other writings. They won't go into other information. And so those of us who study beyond the 66 books, that's bold enough to go beyond the 80 books, that will go into the Old Testament pseudepigrapha, that will go into the Nag Hammadi, that will go into different types of understandings. That's really our record. That will go into the Book of Mormon. That will go into all this other stuff. See, a lot of the camps won't do that. And this is not a camp video. I'm trying to make a point of, you need somebody like myself who comes out of the church. There's a lot of pastors that's coming out of the churches that's coming into this truth. And so there are people who will not listen to the camps because of their behaviors. And that don't go for all the camps. But truth be told, you got some that's going to make it bad for others. And then people are going to be turned off from the truth because they're like, man, I don't want to be involved in that. We got camps that don't believe that other nations are going to make it to the kingdom. We got some camps that believe it. It's almost a little bit of confusion. So you need somebody like myself that can go into the truth and bring out the truth in different aspects. Now, the reason why I made this video is because if you don't understand, those of you that are on the fence, the one that's trying to come into the truth, the one that believe there's more, but turned off because of certain situations, listen to a brother that come out of the church. I have no dog in the fight. I ain't coming out of the camps. I listen to people that dig and dig and dig. Not to say other people don't dig. I'm saying is, be led by the Spirit or be led by the Ruach HaKodesh so you can be able to decipher what's the Most High and how you can form it. Let me give you an example. On jobs, I used to be a supervisor for a particular job, and I always say all the time that learn from this one, learn from that one, learn from this person, learn from that person, but then take a little bit from all those people and then form your own way how you're going to do it. And when you do that, you will get understanding. You will be a better employee or so forth. For the truth, you can learn from this person, learn from that person, learn from this person, but I wouldn't necessarily be all over the place either. You gotta be led by the Spirit so you can be able to get understanding to what's the Most High and what's not the Most High.
I want to give all the praises and the honor to Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shah Bahashem Racha HaKodash. Double honors to the elder apostles and bishops of Great Millstone. Shalom to your other elders, brethren, your supporters of this truth, and includes your sisters as well. Your other brothers, supporting cast. Shalom to the affiliates, shalom to the elect, which means peace to you. This guy is a Christian pastor. I was intrigued by the video because he said he's awakened. He's come out of the Christian church. But then I already know that things are going to go for a turn to the left. This is one of those politically correct Christians or now Hebrew Israelites, who this Hebrew Israelite has taken the mindset, or let me say, their actions of that he followed in Christianity and kind of brought it into truth. This is why Matthew 18 said, when thou come serve the Lord, you must become as a little child. No matter what age you are, you must come as a little child, and you must start over. Now, you might be able to bring something to the truth from things that you've learned, but you have to start all over. You know what I'm saying? So this man, again, has this political correct mindset where he's not mad at the camps, they're on the front line, but then he insults them. You know what I'm saying? Then he's making his claim, you got to choose a man like me so I can show you the way, because I was in Christianity myself. I was a pastor myself, and I don't mean jack crap. I don't want to so-called curse as he said we do. You've seen a prophet Jeremiah, a young man. The Lord exalteth who he will. You can't say, well, just because I was in a Christian church, it's kind of like somebody who was into, he also says go into the Book of Mormons. This is way out there. Somebody who was in Mormon, right? You can't come into the truth and say, well, I was in the Book of Mormon, so I know all about Christianity or Islam. We don't care. We don't care. If that's what you did, that's what you did. It doesn't make you a greater person. You got men that's been in this truth for many years, many years, right? So, we don't care. You can have been in a Christian church for 50 years, and then you come into the truth and bringing your Christian philosophy and thinking that we're going to fall for that. No, we're not going to fall for it. All the Lord needs is the elect. Matthew 4 says, go ye to the highways and bid to the marriage. Bring good and bad, but bid to the marriage. That's what you're supposed to be doing if you're a prophet of the Lord. But a lot of these guys, they don't want to get on the front line. They want to stay in the back, and that's cool. But you need to keep your opinions to yourself. But anyway, we're going to go into some history and show that there's no new thing under the sun. Right? There's no new thing under the sun. I'm going to read a little commentary as well. Let's go to Jude 1 and 3. It says, Beloved, when I gave all diligence to write unto you of the common salvation, it was needful for me to write unto you that unto you and exhort you that ye should earnestly contend for the faith which once delivered unto the saints. So who will we be contending to the faith for? Really, we have no business contending to the faith with Christians. There's some other world, right? We're coming to the finish line, and all that matters is the elect. So the elect must be sifted from these other Israelites, and like this guy, and I can't say if he's the elect or not. Maybe he will change of way. Maybe you'll see this video, have a change of heart, right? But you can't stay in the back while we on the front lines and all of a sudden you got all this information. Yeah, all these different books. Let's go to contend, which I know what it means. I'm just going to pull it up for you who may not know. Earnestly contend, G 1864.
Strong's G 1864. Epagonizomai. Epagonizomai.
It just says contend, which really goes to argue. Right here it says to struggle, to contend, like a boxing contender with con with in the ten, to argue, to fight, really. It says engage in rivalry, to compete, right? So what is this guy talking about? You know what I'm saying? So you're going to have that. You're going to have us. You're going to have camps going against each other. This is what it is. We're going to engage in rivalry and compete. So all those books that he picked up, he doesn't see that. I don't know. This is kind of weird. Let's go to some AI. AI has been helpful in some things, right? I asked the question, were there different Israelite groups even argue amongst one another? We know this is Acts 6 and 1. We'll get that. It says, there have been different groups of the Jewish people Jews, these people we know is written by, right, arguing amongst one another, particularly during the Second Temple before 70 AD, when movements like the Pharisees, the Sadducees, the Essenes, right, the Zealots, the younger brother in my camp was going to them. The Essenes are what we might best call an apocalyptic sect of Judaism, right? The Zealots, are fanatical, uncompromising in pursuit of their religious, political, other ideals. You got some guys that call themselves the Sicarii, the Zealots, so forth and so on. So, and we believe in reincarnation, and we believe there's no new thing under the sun. There's no remembrance of things that have come or a form of the past. So we know, well, now we're remembering. So these people that are waking up, you got the Pharisees that's here, the seducers. I mean, you got wicked Pharisees and Sadducees. You got the Pharisees, the Sadducees. That's what I meant to say. The Sadducees, the Essenes, the Zealots, and so forth and so on. And it was always a conflict. So if there's no new thing under the sun, and God didn't want this, would that had happened? Yahweh wanted this, and Yahweh wants it again. This is just how it's going to be. And there had to be groups back then saying, can't we all just get along? You know what I'm saying? You had to have that happening. You know, you had the, who did you have? What did they call them? The Stoics. You had the Epicureans. The Stoics believed in the spiritual aspect. The Epicureans believed more of, if I'm not mistaken, the carnal, fleshly aspect. It's like everybody had their own vision, their own way. And they couldn't, they had no patience, and a lot of them had no faith. So they figured, we're going to take it up ourselves and do what we're going to do. So we see the same behavior back. So I don't know what these people who claim to know all these books, maybe this pastor needs to put down the books, right? I don't know why they call them pastors, because the real pastors are the elect teaching the pastor. You know what I'm saying? So the shepherds, right, who was teaching, you know. So anyway, let's go to Acts 6:1. And in those days, the number of the disciples was multiplied. There arose a murmuring in secret murmurings of the Grecians against the Hebrews, because the widows had neglected their daily administration. So I want to go into some real quick commentary. The Grecians. The English version always carefully used the word and not Greeks. Now, why? Because the Grecians was considered Hellenistic Jews. Let me go on. For the Hellenistes of Greek-speaking Jews, that's why it said Grecian. But then you also had Greeks or Hellene Jews, right? Which the scholars kind of ignore that and just say that's talking about everybody else. Although it's a multitude of people that make up being Greek. But somehow they need to keep the identity of the Israelites never lost their way, when clearly even back in Babylon that happened. Anyway, I mean, these scholars, they're not spiritual men. They know some things, they're just not spiritual men. Anyway, these were known as the dispersion among the Gentiles, or generally the dispersion, the sojourners. So we go back to the Old Testament and we see stranger, sojourner, and everybody say they're heathens. Yeah, okay. Anyway, of the dispersion of the scattered abroad, James 1:1. Many of the converts of the day of the Pentecost must have belonged to this body. Now, we got to understand there was another dispersion, a greater dispersion, where we were scattered through the transatlantic slave trade, right? And even before that, you had the sub-Saharan slave trade. You had the Indian Ocean slave trade. You had the Barbary slave trade, right? So you had various other, I don't know how they link it to the transatlantic slave trade, because the transatlantic slave trade was more fierce and more, it was more of a torture, where they would take groups of people from Spain, Portugal, Africa, various other places of the world, and the Israelites and shift them all across back and forth through the seas and the coast. And then some of our people that sided with the Barbers, right, which was some Muslims, they was involved in it too. You know, it's just what it is. Many of the converts of the day of the Pentecost must have belonged to this body. This is why you go to Acts 2. So probably did Barnabas and the others named in the note of Acts 4:37, now they were becoming prominent section of the church, perhaps more numerous than the Hebrews or the Jews of Palestine. So you can see the different sects and different groups. They, as their name implies, spoke Greek habitually. You also, in Acts 13, you had what you called the God-fearers as well, right? You had different, look at this, Jews of Palestine, right? I believe these people had to read some of this, and no wonder they went over there and did what they did to them over there, right? Anyway, they are, as name implies, spoke Greek habitually, and as the rule, not need the older Hebrew or speak the current Arabic. They read the Septuagint version of the Old Testament. They were commonly more zealous with the zeal of the pilgrims, like the travelers, I believe, for the sanctity of the holy places, than the Jews of Jerusalem itself, who had been familiar with this from infancy. So, long story short, you had people on fire, whether they were right or wrong, but different sects and different groups, and this is why they wanted to kill Apostle Paul. They were for the truth, but Paul was saying, teaching after the Messiah, and this is why you had a rift between the Pharisees, you know, and the Messiah, and of course Apostle Paul and the apostles and the disciples, because they felt it was all about the Abrahamic law. It was all about being of the seed of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. You know, that's what it was all about. But there were people who were lost who needed conversion, because you had Israelites that said, the hell with them. They don't need to convert. Just like the woman, the Canaanite woman in Matthew 15. You know, that was the mindset. You know, the hell with them. They ain't going to convert. The hell with them. You know, but the Spirit of the Lord, you know, he sent his son Yahushua, you call Jesus, to bring us back through faith, and then the forgiveness and the repentance. And that's what's being preached. And that's how you become a Christian. But in Acts 11:26, it says the disciples were called Christians first, right? It's a real simple process once you lay it all out. So the real Christians were Israelites, right? So this guy, he's all over the place with a whole bunch of books. Their history is there. There's simple AI. There's simple commentaries, right? There's men there set up to teach you. See, these pastors, they come into the truth. They don't want to be taught. They want to be the teachers. They want to play, let's make a deal, right? Come to me and I will teach you the truth. This is what these guys do. They don't come up under any kind of order. They just want to be the order. They want to run the show. That's what's wrong with this guy. Anyway, that's all I have on that. Shalom.